Hi, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach Podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach Podcast. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Shannon Clark. Shannon has over 20 years of experience consulting and coaching in the health and wellness industry for individuals and employers. In 2019, she suffered a traumatic brain injury that altered the course of her life. Her recovery journey resulted in a new mission to provide effective and affordable recovery options for fellow sufferers. Today, Shannon runs Revive Coaching, LLC, which uses coaching and a neurocentric approach to personally train clients, both internationally over Zoom and in person, helping brain injury sufferers live a full life. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being willing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and jump in. I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about you, give our audience a little bit more taste of who you are. So where are you from and what do you love?
I'm from Pennsylvania. I've always been in Pennsylvania. I love my family. I'm married. I've had my husband for 20 years now. I have twin daughters turning 15 and an 8-year-old daughter as well. So they take up most of my time.
Yes,
but yeah, I've always loved learning. I've always been active. I love being in nature. I think if I could summarize my life, I would summarize it I feel like my life's purpose is always centered around helping others with well-being, helping others with connection and relationships, or with growing purpose. And so my career is mostly centered around that, whether it was health coaching or consulting in the workplace. It's taken different forms. And then in 2019, I got hit in the head. And then that changed.
And that changed everything. Yes. And actually, we will dive into that for sure. I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about your previous work though, before the TBI changed your trajectory. Because I think we're supposed to be friends. A lot of what you said is like, oh yeah, similar things. I have a 15-year-old. I have an 8-year-old. I grew up in Delaware, so we're like kind of neighbors. And just that interest in helping people. I love it. So what were you doing in your work? How did you get into the health coaching and the other things?
I don't know. I think I've always knew I wanted to go into health. That was always, I think, a passion of mine. And I thought I was going to go into medicine when I was in college. But when I started to shadow, I realized, no, wait, like, I think I really want to help people to be healthy, like proactively or help people when they are sick become healthy again, like really more of a lifestyle focus. And that, got me into becoming certified as a personal trainer and starting to accumulate a lot of certifications that support lifestyle change and these other things. So then I got into wellness coaching in the workplace. And that led into corporate consulting, which was more like the coaching of employers who are really interested in changing their corporate culture for some reason. Many are interested in more injury prevention, others attracting employees of a certain type, or just they're realizing that their workplace might be supporting a lot of unhealthy behaviors and they want to change that. So that was about 11 years I spent doing that.
Were you doing that on your own, like an individual consultant, or were you part of a company?
I was part of a company.
That's really cool. Very cool. So were you happy in that, or was the TBI kind of a out of the blue surprise change of everything?
I loved what I did. I knew I probably wouldn't do it forever. I really saw myself moving into more of like a family life coaching, which is where I started getting into a lot of like studying of relationships. And I, got the trainings from the Gottman Institute. I have always valued relationships too. And so it was, I would say, where I probably saw myself going. I just didn't quite get there.
Yes. Okay. So what happened instead? Tell us, go ahead about your injury. Like what? Yeah. Let's hear it.
So in September of 2019, so this is, I think we can all timestamp things like COVID is pre-COVID. So a few months, about 5 months before the world started to shut down and be distracted by COVID. I can't talk about the actual incident because I signed a confidentiality agreement with my settlement. But I can tell you everything that happened from a health perspective and after that. So the first few days after my injury were very typical concussion symptoms. I knew something was wrong though, and I was very scared. I think I was scared because I knew something was really wrong, inside. And I was probably more scared for how this would affect other people. I think that was what was, going on inside me. And, I went to the ER, and that was a very, typical story I'm sure you hear all the time, right? Like I was told 6 weeks, you'll probably get better, wait and see, come back if it gets worse. And yep.
Who did they want you to follow up with? Like, did they say?
My primary care provider, So.
And did you?
No, because, on the 5th day, I woke up though, with a very different experience. So like, in my mind, that is the day everything changed, because I felt like when the injury happened, I felt like, I think I have a concussion. Day 5, I woke up, I'm in a different body. And this was like a really different experience. I woke up, I remember looking at the clock, not being able to make sense of it. I tried to get up to go to the bathroom. I couldn't hold on, or I couldn't walk without holding on. I was very unstable. It was very frightening. So we go back to the ER, and that is when I then was referred to a concussion specialist. And I know I think it took 2 weeks to get into that. So there's so many points I could point out in this story where it went bad. There's been at least 2 so far.
I'm impressed that you got set up with a concussion specialist first, though. Like that's where they knew to send you to somebody that knew what they were doing with concussions. But yeah, when you're not able to walk without holding onto a wall, 2 weeks, I'm sure feels like infinity. Like that's, you don't, yeah. But I assume they checked you, they made sure you weren't like, you didn't have a brain bleed or anything, but they were just like, right, we can't do anything for you. Go see this other person when you can get into them.
Right. Started seeing the concussion specialist. And I knew, like in hindsight, like looking back, knowing the things we know now, I think I would have checked the box for every subtype of concussion. But at the time, I know I was only referred for vision therapy, but I didn't start it for 3 months. I was considered too symptomatic. At the time it was 3 months from the injury. I was still, wearing the thick sunglasses and the hat everywhere I went. So I was referred to physical therapy to attend to my cervical injuries, which did make me more comfortable. But, there's so many therapies I wasn't referred to at that point. Like, I know I haven't listed all my symptoms, but like a lot. One of my big problems was falling. I was very unstable, but, I was never referred for vestibular therapy. I reported my falling problem. This was a thing,
Yeah.
Never. And it is possible that my physical therapist was trying with me. It is very possible, but I was so symptomatic, it made me very ill to do many things. So in hindsight, I think there was some goodwill and some good efforts probably, but I was in their mind not responding probably. If that was attempted.
Right.
If it wasn't much, because I know even at, vision therapy, they would, try to move my head and I'd feel like I'm going to throw up, so.
I'm curious, what specialty was the concussion specialist that you saw? Like what was their background? Was it one person or was it like a group?
It was a rehabilitation group connected to a medical center. He was the concussion specialist as part of the, I don't know what he was not a neurologist. I'm not sure what
And you saw him,
his
you weren't
background was.
doing, like PT, OT speech as part of that, or was that all part of it?
No, I was referred to another center for physical therapy that was another business entity. And then I was referred to a vision therapy clinic that was not attached it was not all in-house. It was not a comprehensive integrative approach that we all wish for. It was very, pieced out.
And I'm just curious, with the concussion specialist doctor that you saw, was that, I'm assuming he's a doctor. Was he just kind of like, yeah, come and tell me what you're dealing with, and then I will refer you out to these other things that I think you need? Or was he doing anything with you himself?
The only things he did with himself, I think he quarterbacked, he referred me out, and he would occasionally just like check certain things, like primarily my vision. And that was their biggest concern, was my vision. And I think it probably was my biggest problem.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. So what other symptoms were you dealing with?
Well, the fatigue was the biggest issue, for sure, in terms of just not feeling like I could function in life. I had to rest for at least an hour to 2 hours a day. I was wearing the wrist brace around because I kept falling and breaking my wrist. I just stopped getting the thing checked because it was just a small problem compared to everything else. So,
oh my gosh,
it was part of my life to just wear a wrist brace around. But I had the other sensitivities that are, sound and light sensitivity, cognitive challenges, issues making sense of space patterns. I wasn't functioning well. I mean, it was really, pretty bad.
So, and I'm curious how, you weren't functioning like your life. How were you able to keep doing work, or like the mom thing? Like how did it play into all of those things?
Well, I wasn't working anymore. I was doing what I would describe as the bare minimum, coping the best we could. I was fortunate to have a, supportive family that was really helping a lot in terms of just even extended family pitching in. And actually one thing that, and I don't want to minimize the impact of COVID, but I can say in that way, the world slowed down for me. It was like, I didn't have to get people places. Thank God, because I couldn't.
Yeah.
So in that way, it made my life more doable, because there was just less to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Well, how much did you know about concussion, prior to this experience, and what surprised you about this whole concussion experience?
Well, I would say my knowledge was more of a health savvy version of misconceptions. I thought what most people believe about them. I think I certainly did not expect any of what I experienced, nor was prepared for it. So it was all extremely surprising.
Yeah. How did it? How long? I know, like it's a continuing journey, but you said about day 5 is when like things really, really hit. You felt like you were in a different body, and then you started like 3 months out before you could start doing vision therapy. Like how long were you in the throes of the? I don't even want to say the hard part. I feel like all of it's so hard. So I don't even know how to ask this question, but
sorry, I got you.
Okay, thanks.
That's good. I'll just pick up the story. Because it was around, the 6 months when I was declared at maximum medical improvement. And at that point, I did improve some with vision therapy, but still, I could still only really read or look at my computer for maybe 30 minutes at a time. And I still needed the prism glasses. I mean, I had 4 different pairs of glasses, depending on what I was doing. I was diagnosed with PTSD. Dealing with the challenges of workers' compensation. I won't get into those weeds, but I will say that in and of itself is kind of traumatizing, really. It was all very difficult. But, all of those things, the fatigue, that was my maximum medical improvement.
So the doctors or the healthcare providers that you were working with were like, okay, this is as good as she's going to get. Is that what that means?
Basically.
Okay. So that's the point where they were like, okay, we're done.
It's
your new normal, get used to it.
Yep. Yeah. And it was, infuriating. The best decision I ever made was to not believe that. I begged my vision therapist to keep working with me. I was like, I'm willing to show, I'm willing to do the work. Even I tried to pursue cognitive therapy. And the cognitive therapist that I saw and did the testing said, your functions are there. They're just slow. And, you get too upset when you can't do the things you want to do. So that, makes it harder for you to think. And I was just like, no kidding.
This is the problem.
That's why I'm here, to get help and make this better.
I wonder if that provider is not familiar with concussion specifically. I feel like a lot of times people are used to they're doing a cognitive therapy with people who have these different issues coming in. Like this is a concussion is a unique and different challenge that I think a lot of people, well-intentioned, just don't know how to deal with. So yeah, I don't know. That's frustrating.
Yeah, I think I at least had some, that it's all siloed, right? And that was part of what was happening to me. I was being siloed or sent to people in their silo that weren't all under a concussion umbrella, getting lost in that.
Yeah. And I'm curious too, with the vision therapy, you asked if you could get more and they said, no, it sounds like they were like, you're going to get, is that, this is definitely speculation, but I think this happens in the medical community. Like if insurance is done, that's when the providers are done. And so the insurance companies a lot of times have a lot more say in how well people can get than I think they should personally.
That may have been part of it. I did say I was willing to pay. And I think that might have, I don't know if that made things better or worse, but I had this attitude of, right, I know there's so much of the body that can be trained. I think that was one thing that I had going into this, I've heard so many testimonies and experience. So I wasn't willing to receive that answer because, what kind of trainer or coach sits and tells somebody who's willing to show up and do the work, tells them no, like that? What?
You've reached your max. There's no getting better from here. Yeah, that's to believe. It is. Yes. And I hope that this is helpful for people out there listening. Don't believe it if somebody tells you you're as good as you're going to get. There's room for improvement. I feel like everybody always has room for improvement in some way.
Yeah. So I had the whole gap of time that went by from the time I was injured until I started to get the help I actually needed to start me on the trajectory towards a full recovery was 2 years.
Okay. So what did that look like after you were told, okay, we've done everything we can with you. Good luck. Did they refer you to anybody or was it just on you to find the next steps?
It was really up to me to find the next thing.
Okay. And how did you do?
Well, I was fortunate to have a settlement, which, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I've got a year-ish to figure this out where I feel like, I know many people are in a position where they, can't focus on the recovery because they have to work. So I did have that blessing, but I saw that I thought I had two choices. I thought, okay, I'm either going to invest some of this in, some expensive clinics somewhere to try to get better or I'm not, so I did have that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
But what I realized, and this was a painful realization, was my actual two choices were really, I'm either going to put my money into an expensive clinic or I'm going to have the more expensive option of being disabled for the rest of my life. And those were the real two choices. So that wake-up call, and I happened to meet somebody who had been to Cognitive FX through an encounter on social media, which is why I love that there's people like you out doing this and spreading the word so that resources can reach people. And I talked to somebody who had a situation like me who went there and said she was 8 months from her treatment there and 80% better. And I thought if I had half the chance that she did, that it would be worth my investment to do this. And so I made the decision to do that. I had my initial evaluation with Dr. Fong, and she was the first person that told me, she was like, you're the perfect candidate for our program.
Yes, you are.
And I'm like, I like you already because you have hope. You're talking to me like I'm a trainable human being, which I had believed all along. So we're finally talking the same language. she was the first person to tell me that, okay, like when you're feeling tired, focus on getting blood flow to the brain and you're going to find you have a lot more energy. And that just initial tip before I even paid to go there was a total game changer. I went from needing to rest every single day to needing to lay down to rest maybe once a week.
Are you serious? That's amazing.
It was amazing.
That's like legitimately
why didn't
amazing.
Anybody else tell me to get blood flow to my head? This was one of many, I'll tell you so many stories of things where I was like, are you kidding me? Like it was that easy. And I had been suffering for so long.
Yes. I'm just curious, what would you do to get the blood flow to your head? Like what were you doing to do that?
Just go move. I got kind of serious. Like when I realized that was a thing, I got an exercise bike so that I always had access to it.
Yeah.
Because it was like a source now. And I was feeling kind of encouraged, like, all right, I'm on a path to something better than where I was.
Yes. It's amazing how much energy it can give us, or not even like, well, yes, physical energy, but it just like gets us so excited when we have hope and we have like we're so much more motivated to do things. And it just like lifts the whole system when we have a trajectory. It makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I had shared, with my concussion doctor, I'm like, what I was thinking about doing and what was happening with exercise. And he was skeptical of all of it. And it was, of course, he's like, well, exercise helps everybody. And I'm like, no. Like I was a person who exercised before.
Mm-hmm.
This is really different. Like if you have not felt what it feels like for the gears in your brain to not turn and then they turn again, then you don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then I go to cognitive effects, and that, was a powerful week. I know that by day 2, I really crashed pretty hard. It was hard work, and I knew it would be. I think I was most nervous that I wouldn't be able to handle it. But somehow, they're so good about it there with teaching you how to manage your threat levels and stuff like that. So, but day 2, I was like, what am I doing? Like I am in over my head. But by day 3, the fog lifted that I had always had in my mind. Like I know I still had cognitive difficulty. I still knew I had a lot of work, but I just felt more clear by day 3. I had a number of fast breakthroughs that were pretty cool. They were, one of them was, the vestibular stuff. I think I told you the story about wearing the Shocks headphones. Like I did not know how nauseous I was all the time until I was tested in the, just wearing the Shocks headphones, set at a certain frequency to help stimulate the atrial and saccule, whatever. I was like, wow. I just had to wear, I wore them during my therapies. And so this was, an additional moment of like, are you kidding me? Like it was this easy. I spent how many years falling, and not secure in how I moved, but all it really took was moving around in these headphones I could have got off of Amazon on a free app. Like that's really what it was. Are you kidding?
It is what the knowledge will do. Like having and good knowledge can change everything.
Can change everything.
The answers are out there.
A number of circumstances like that. Another was with the because my eyes weren't converging well at all. But when Andy used a pen light, shining a pen light in one of my eyes, and all of a sudden I was converging to my nose. And that wasn't like the thing that fixed my vision. It was, but I could tell in that moment there was something that clicked where it was like my brain was like, oh, that's what you want my eyes to do. Like I know what my target is. I can work for this and I can do it. So I started to have visual improvement then instead of being at a plateau. Mm-hmm. So yeah, during that week it was just so powerful. Like, and that was really, especially with those encounters with Andy, I was just like, well, I guess I need to become this guy now.
Naturally, that's the next thing to do.
That's the next thing. I needed a new career anyway. And then it was too helpful. I'd suffered too much, too many people suffering. It was just kind of this obvious next step. Like I was going to learn what this guy knew.
I love that so much. So how did you go about doing that? And actually, I think, hold on, for anybody listening, they might, people might, I want to come back really quickly to the Shocks headphones. Are they called Aftershocks or is it just Shocks? I don't remember.
I think they changed their name. It used to be, I think it used to be Aftershocks and they changed it to Shocks.
Okay. And that helps with vestibular concerns.
It can help to, like, there's a vibration that you can set a frequency that can help stimulate the utricle or saccule that may support somebody in their vestibular rehabilitation. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. We can probably link to that in the show notes if people are interested in learning more about that. And then what was it that, Andy, who works at CFX, they call him the magician over there. People he knows so many amazing things that help people. And it's because he understands the brain really well. And so let's hear more about how you got in. Well, actually, I'm curious. Were you like at the end of that week, were you like, I'm ready to go and jump into this new career? Like, was that,
well,
how did
I mean, I was still, I knew I had my work to do, like I was still left there with a lot of problems, I made improvement. I had hope. I had a plan. I knew that I was going to be working hard for probably a minimum of 3 months, probably 3 to 6 months was sort of my expectation. But what I thought, my little master plan was like, I'm going to Google this guy's training and I'm going to start it. And I will make that part of my cognitive exercise for the work that I do at home. And I'll get it done as I do it, I'll just work towards it. Because I did think at a minimum, I could start coaching at some point, if I improve. It was just sort of like at what level and what subject was to be determined. At a minimum, I knew it would support me in my own recovery. And I was just so curious. So I was, doing it was about 1 to 1.5 hours, 3 days a week of homework between the intervals and the vision work and cognitive work. And then I was also like listening and studying the Z Health curriculum and becoming more familiar with that, which, I was really, I think that's where I learned the most, honestly, because I was really just deep in the trenches because I still had my struggles. I still had symptoms. I had some education filtering in. I was equipped better to manage my symptoms. I was also, doing difficult therapies, difficult exercises for vision and so forth, and trying to, still be with my family and be present for them. So this was sort of a large task, and it was a whole mix of things happening. My sleep wasn't regulated yet. So yeah, it was that I feel like the next 6 months is where I learned most of the stuff, like the day to day. How do you, help your symptoms? How do you manage your threat responses? Oh, what a difference it makes when you fuel first before you do things. How to pulse my day to be more productive. The low hanging fruit that is breathing.
Right. Breathing is a big deal. It's a very big deal.
Go on a really long tangent on the breathing. But, for energy to the brain and for managing threat responses, that was huge. Knowing how to personally lower my threat levels was huge. But learning these things, it was more of these one of my biggest lessons there was like, I suffered unnecessarily for 2 years. That was my biggest takeaway. I suffered so much, and it wasn't just that I wasn't on the right path. It was that, like, a lot of these symptoms, there are ways that you can better feel and you can control your symptoms when you know how to manage your threat responses. Like, I just didn't have to suffer. And I learned through so many experiences. Like, one story, I remember coming back from cognitive FX and feeling really motivated to try things because I was feeling all like encouraged. And I thought, oh, I want to take my kids back to school shopping at Target. Well, in my defense, I didn't know what I was capable yet. I was kind of curious. And I sent them on a mission. I'm like, look, we are in and out, guys. I had them like, they were off. They knew what they were to do, how fast they needed to get back. But really by the 20-minute point, like I crashed hard. And I remember getting back in the car and sitting in the car thinking like, oh my gosh, like I cannot drive this vehicle. Like I was completely stuck. And I had the 3 kids in the car. We're in the Target parking lot. But in that moment, like I remember being like, no. Like, oh, I need some fuel. I'm like digging through the Target bags for some candy or something. And I, start lengthening my exhales and start getting my threat under control. And like it took me, a few minutes, but I eventually like came around and then I drove home. But a month before, I would have had to call for help. I would have had to call my mother-in-law, be like, I'm stuck somewhere with my kids. I can't drive home.
That's huge. Those tools, like knowing the tools and knowing what to do, how to calm, and like giving yourself the time to do that. That's amazing. I love this story because it's such a testament to how much good training and knowledge and experience and understanding your nervous system makes all the difference.
It does. And I kind of made a game of it at that point. I was like, okay, how fast can I get my threat responses under control? Because you can do it pretty fast. Like if you're good and you understand your nervous system, you know what really works for you, and you actually, maybe even add them together. It kind of like I started to learn, like no matter like how bad I react, like I can get that threat response under control in under 2.5 minutes. I had it down.
Impressive. I had it down. Very impressive. Wow.
But that gave me more confidence and more, ability to do more, because I wasn't so afraid to get stuck, because I knew at the end that like, this is the threat response. I need to calm myself down. I need to refuel, and I'm going to be okay. And that equipped me also then to do more therapies.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Really quick question. So you said it was 2 years of unnecessary suffering, which is so fun. But so it was about 2 years when you went to the cognitive FX?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you did the Z Health curriculum while you were, as part of your recovery, where you were learning these things and applying them and practicing them, it sounds like, and understanding your system better. Yeah.
And I also started mentoring others, because you do, I talked to so many people who were, interested in going to cognitive FX, and just, it's like if somebody knows somebody with a head injury, they say, oh, call my friend Janet, talking to so many people.
Yes.
And sort of bringing them under your wings, in this regard, if you just happen to be somebody who's found something better. Right. And then, the mentorship and the education kind of kept growing.
Very, very cool. So at what point would you say you felt like you were back-ish? Like that you felt like you could do the things you wanted to do, and you were feeling like
it was about I give it the range of 6 to 9 months between after the point I was at cognitive FX. Mm-hmm. And I give it like this window because it was around that time, around the 6-month point, that I had a daughter who had a very difficult experience with COVID and developed long COVID as a result. And I was very distracted by that. So I sort of walked through the finish line. I didn't run through that finish line. It's sort of
That's fair. Yeah. Energy and efforts into her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah. It's really its own story. I think it's interesting though. At the time there were no providers willing to work with children who had long COVID. It was hard to find care for her. She had obvious signs of brain injury, like from what I would easily recognize. She has difficulties with her vision, her balance, ANS dysfunction, and in some ways more severe than mine. Some of her symptoms were just more frightening, and I didn't know what to do with them. She was developing, what we could best describe as like a asthma, and just very erratic with her heart rate and blood pressures, just in really strange and confusing ways. And I was like, oh my gosh, like really need some help here. And that is when I realized, she was struggling to go to school. I think she was trickling over the home stretch of what the school year was, because she could barely attend. And that's really when I knew we needed help, and we needed it fast, or she's not going to be able to keep up with her school year. This is a really serious thing. So, and I knew I had confidence with cognitive FX because I'd been there, and I'd known that at the time, I think 1/4 of the patients that were coming through were long COVID. So like I'd seen that, I'd witnessed it, I had faith in it. And as far as I'm concerned, they were like my only hope they were like the only thing that I knew of at that point that was helping people successfully. So 1 year from the point that I was there for myself, I was back there with my daughter. So yeah, that was a hard experience. I don't know. That was just like a nightmare for a parent. It's like I went through this hard thing and then I was watching my child go through that. It's like, it was just some kind of a twisted nightmare.
Yeah. How was, I recognize it's a different story, but how was that experience for her? Did she find improvements from going through the program?
Oh, she did. She actually liked it. She was like, I like this a lot better than school. So I'm like, great. The bar's not very high, so that's good. Yeah, they made it fun. And I think just like finishing the storyline, I think, nobody really works on their nervous system, right? Like nobody's really working. I mean, unless you've had a brain injury, people aren't really like just working on their vision and their coordination and all these things. So she was, right? So, I mean, even as a child, I think looking back, I think her total recovery from the time she developed it was about 1.5 years. But she was able to return to school full time, but we worked in a break. So she took 1 class off. So she sort of had a pacing built in and some therapy sort of baked into her day. And then by halfway through the school year, she was back to a full school year. But because she had worked on this stuff, it's like she was noticing, like especially by the second half of the school year, she started to admit things like, I think my memory is better than what it was before.
Wow.
I'm feeling a little more coordinated than what I used to.
Even before COVID.
Before COVID, right? Like, so she's saying like, there's something to all this. Like, I actually feel like this kind of gave me an edge, like I'm better than what I was before. And, that was sort of my experience as well. It's like, you put some work into this, you can actually, like, people don't know what their potential is because they've never really worked on the nervous system. And then there may be parts that aren't working well, but once you work on it, there's like a magical potential that's in there if people really want to engage in it.
So cool. I love that. I really, really love that. Any other parts of the story that you want to make sure that we cover? Like how after she went to CFX and you were mostly back, it sounds like at that point. What else? Anything else that you care about that?
Yeah, I think once she started about it, that's when I felt like more comfortable with, okay, I can more focus on myself and that's when I started like, okay, it's time for me to start a business. I think, although, one part of the storyline, another resource that became helpful for me at the time was because I was looking for resources to support her with her long COVID along a similar philosophy. That's when I found Next Level Neuro, which is another organization, say similar to Z Health, but they have a long COVID group that's educational, but they also have this mentorship in this world of applied neurology, which I then, as a result of their support with my daughter, I also joined their mentorship. So I've been in that mentorship now for about 2 years, I guess it's been, which is, so it's like the Z Health curriculum, but much more involved. So there's weekly live classes. You travel in for in-person training every 3 months for a few days where you're really like practicing with each other. You're in like a constant community. You're always sharing stories and case studies, and you get like some real practical application for everything. So that's when that entered my life, and that's still a big part of my life now.
Yeah, that's really cool. What are some of the big things that you've learned through from the Z Health and from the Next Level Neuro?
Well, I see where it fits into this world of concussion recovery. I think the big thing that it equips me with is, number one, is this helping to keep threat levels under control, as that is one of the primary things that a concussion or PCS person is experiencing on a day-to-day basis, and how that really is a custom thing. And you can work with somebody individually to help them understand how to, reduce their sense of threat. So they're reducing their symptoms, on a day-to-day basis. So that's extremely helpful because that's that's the day-to-day challenge. And I think the other thing is when I work with somebody, there's 3 main ways. It kind of falls into 3 buckets. Uh-huh. One of it is going to be their symptom management stuff, right? Like it's like just surviving the day-to-day, because that is not they're often or rarely ever supported with how to survive the day-to-day. So symptom management coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So it equips you, and not all aspects of that. I think some aspects of that are outside of the scope of that, but within it, it's that how do I lower my threat and I can have less symptoms, and being more mindful of fueling the brain and having better breathing and so forth. Another bucket that I work with people on that I would say is not in that curriculum is sort of this like healthcare navigation.
Yes.
The third bucket, which I think this is probably the most focused part for it, is when somebody has been through their therapies and they've reached their maximum medical improvement, there's often still work to do, right? It's like they have goals, like they have things that they want to accomplish or activities that they love that they might still not be able to do yet. There's so many reasons for that, right? Like if they were into different siloed therapies that weren't integrated yet, or some of these, therapies, they might have trained them very well to get into a neutral position, but not move, right? Like think of my vision therapy. Like I could do some of these things while sitting, but if I stood or if I walked, no.
Out the door. Yes.
So there was, I guess, so closing that gap for people, right? Like it's like, okay, from where you've been left to where you want to be. So being able to train an individual with their nervous system in mind, and with the brain in mind, to be able to train that is, I think, one of the biggest strengths of that kind of an education.
Yes, I love it. I would love to hear if you want to share just like a tip or two from those different buckets, like any ideas or recommendations that you have to someone who's like, I don't even know how to do the day-to-day. Like, can you give any advice here for the day-to-day stuff, the navigating the healthcare system, and what, after you've been told you're good enough? Like any
right? Oh yeah, there's so much. I think the two, and I do have some free videos on my Facebook and Instagram that are about this little tips. But I think now symptoms are important. I'm not going to say they're not. This is one of those comments can get me in trouble, right? Like symptoms, they're there. Yep, they're a sign there's something wrong. I'm not saying they're not, but symptoms on a day-to-day basis are like a terrible indicator of your improvement, because people are always, pushing up against their limits and their capacities. So one of the most important things that people can do is to track their capacities and keep an eye on those and watch how they're changing. So how long are you able to read? How long are you able to be on the computer? What is your limit of exercise? And be specific about it. Know what your current limitations are and watch those change, because they will, if you're doing the right things. But the reality is if you're on the computer for 30 minutes or you're on the computer for 60 minutes, you're probably going to get a headache. It's not.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you're worse. It means you did it for 60 minutes and you used to be able to do it for 30. Your capacity increased.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think that's such a good point. Such a good point. Because the symptoms may be the same, but yes, your capacity before they hit is different. And that, noticing that is a big deal.
I think that's a big one. And I think if people make a mistake, it's usually that their steps of challenging themselves are too big. And I know some of it, it's not like their fault, like they don't realize. But like, I think the grocery store is a really good example of that, because you're not just challenging one system when you go to the grocery store. You're challenging like every system when you go to the grocery store. So if you go to the grocery store for 15 minutes, going there for 30 minutes is exponentially harder. It's not just, that's too big. But so knowing, I think that, thinking about fueling first before you put demand on your brain is so critical. And that, I think, is, something to really restructure your day around. I think people do best coordinating that around their meals. So, because they're already thinking about fuel then, and they're already sitting down. So it's a little bit easier to chunk your day that way. But thinking like, okay, I need to eat. How am I breathing? Am I breathing in a way that's lowering my threat or increasing my threat? Am I breathing in a way that's giving me energy or taking away my energy? Am I getting blood flow to my brain? Now, I know that like movement isn't necessarily the best for everybody at this time. So I do want to just say, I know we got to customize this. But in general, if movement helps you, that is a great way to get fuel to the brain before you have focused productive time. And then you're kind of can have some recovery where you're lowering your threat back down after. So restructuring your day that way can be a game changer for energy levels for sure.
I love it. And the fueling that you're talking about is food as well as breathing, like the air that you're getting in there and how you're navigating your nervous system with that, as well as the movement and getting the blood flow going. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. If you think of it's an energy crisis in many ways. So get energy to your brain.
Let's do this thing.
I really do think that people with post-concussive syndrome deserve as much attention for their lifestyle management as diabetes.
Yes.
I really do. So yeah, that's why I really I'm working on a course for symptom management, so that people know how to get better energy to their brain and they know how to manage their threat levels when they do arise. So that yes, symptoms are going to happen, but they shouldn't wreck your entire day. And I think that's I love when somebody's in a really good concussion program and they're doing all their therapies. That's great. But I can tell that whoever designed that program never had post-concussive syndrome, because they would know that if you do all that work, you are not going to be able to function or be with your family later. You got it. I mean, it'd be really nice if they baked in some consideration for these threat responses that people have to deal with on a regular basis. You're going to do all this, well, great, but recover. And I don't just mean potentially rest, if that's helpful. I mean, lowering your exhales, slowing your exhales, or doing things that actually reduce threat and reduce your symptoms so that you can function later and be with your family. There could be so much more consideration to that.
Yes. I think it might be helpful to have you define what you mean. I don't know if everybody listening will understand what you mean by threat responses or threat level. How does that play into your symptoms? Or is it the same thing? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I am referring to, okay, so let's say you're either out of energy, you're at low on fuel, or there's this, sensory mismatch in your system. Your eyes aren't seeing the same thing. Your vestibular system isn't sending the same messages. Your vision is mismatched. And then your body says, okay, there's something wrong here. And you end up in a sympathetic response where it's like fight or flight. It's like your body is going into these symptoms essentially to get you to stop what you're doing because it's very threatened by them. It's trying to protect you. It's afraid you're going to fall. It's melting down at the kind of information is just not computing at this time. So you're getting these symptoms like the headaches or nausea. It's all the ways you feel miserable, basically. I think I would define as the threat responses. It's just defining it and knowing that this is part of a fight or flight situation. And that there are ways that you can send messages back to your body that tell it it's okay, you're safe, you can calm down. And you can do that by, limiting some of that information that's coming in, like taking a break from the computer or, doing some of the palming exercise, which I know is, taught frequently, where you cover your eyes, give your optic nerve a break. You can slow down your exhales. One of my favorite resources is having people exhale through a straw or a short straw, because it just adds more power to that lengthened exhale, and it can help reduce symptoms very quickly.
Very cool. I think it is so fascinating and tragic that it's not more well known. Exactly what you were just saying. I think so many times people feel like their body is their enemy, but that's not the case. Your body is giving you these pain responses, these symptoms that you're experiencing because it's trying to protect you. It's on your side. It's just confused about what's actually problematic.
Yeah.
And so if you can understand that and love your body and know what to do to help, like you said, you can give signals from the body to the brain to say, hey, actually, we're okay. It's going to be okay. And just knowing that, I think, can be game changing for people. It's because a lot of times it's oh, these symptoms are happening. And then we spiral oh, this means this. And we catastrophize. Whereas if we understand what it is and what it actually is happening, then that can give you so much more power over the situation. So I love Yeah. Thank you for explaining that way. I hope that's helpful for people out there, because it is really important. The education piece makes a really big difference. So important. Thank you for all of those. And I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing any like quick tips on the healthcare navigation as well. Do you have anything that you'd like to help people in general? And this is in the US, like this is US.
Oh, the comments that could get me in trouble right now. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, you can just do one or two is fine, and just really bland. I'll get you in trouble.
Try to. No, I mean, yeah, some of that, it just needs to be said. I mean, I think number one is if your doctor has told you to wait and see if your symptoms are going to improve, go get another opinion.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could be a situation where that is appropriate, right? Like if you have a brain bleed that needs to stabilize, okay, I don't want to be black and white here. But also, getting to care quickly is very important for resolving this issue as soon as possible. I think another thing that I think is important to keep in mind, say number two, because this is an issue I see very commonly. If your medical recommendations have more medications on them than they do rehabilitative therapies, we need to start asking some questions.
Over here, like, yes. Yes. We get an amen, please.
Can we start ending that? I mean, really, it's serious. I don't want to. I know that there's well-meaning doctors, right? Like you see anxiety, you see a sleep problem. We can reduce that symptom for somebody, help them become more comfortable. But if they are not referred to therapies and they're not engaged in active recovery program, they are stuck. And that needs to stop. That's not okay.
Yeah. What helped you with your sleep issues? You mentioned that your sleep hadn't regulated yet, so it sounds like it did. You got to a point where your sleep is better.
I did, and I think it was a little bit of everything. I know that the intervals that they recommend are intended to help regulate the autonomic nervous system. I also did more work to add more kind of like indirect vagus nerve stimulation kind of exercises with like gargling, for example, or, things that really relaxed me. I think that could be different for other people. So I will put that out there. Should kind of test it out on yourself to see what really calms you and relaxes you. But it was like, I really had to tell my system that it was okay to calm down. But it was predictable. I mean, Andy said, in 3 months, you're going to have a sleep breakthrough. That's what he said. And would you believe, like to the week, that is what has happened. Now, there was some other intentionality in there too. I mean, I could go into that. Like that's a whole can of worms, but regulating my circadian rhythm, right? Like access to morning light and evening light. Like I did some of these things too. That was very important for my nervous system to know what time of day it was.
Yes. That light in the morning and evening is important. That's awesome. I appreciate you bringing this up. Yeah, maybe sometime we can talk more about sleep. But I think it's important to throw this out there. That you mentioned in the navigating the medical system, like it's important to get you seen as soon as possible so that you can resolve your symptoms sooner than later. And I think it's important to note that if you have been dealing with this for a really long time and you didn't know, and now you're hearing this and you're like, like you still can make improvements. Like healing is still possible, even if it's been years after the injury. Right. But I think from your perspective, it's like, hey, there was 2 years of unnecessary suffering. And so the sooner you can get in, the sooner you can start doing these things to help your system and actually make those improvements, the better, just so that you're not suffering as long. So right. I think, but it doesn't mean that you're damaged beyond hope. If it's been a long time and you're suffering for a long time, like you're a perfect example, it doesn't mean that you can't get better. So I think that's an important point to throw out there. Just and with that, I guess this goes in well with this question that I want to ask. How have you maintained hope through your recovery journey? Because 2 years of suffering like this, and then seeing your daughter suffer, like how do you keep going through all of this?
Oh, I don't know. I think in the early stages, my hope was probably just a glimmer. Really. But I think it if I had to pick something, it was really the testimonies of others that helped me along the way. Because even, I remember, and I don't think I even put this together until recently, because I was thinking like, what did give me hope back then? And I think there were just little stories around me, like my dad is a personal trainer, and he has a client who had a stroke a long time ago, who was given a wheelchair, who wanted to keep working, and of course my dad was like, if you don't want to give up, I'm not going to give up on you. Let's show up, let's work. You see, and I just visit my dad, and I see this guy who was supposed to be in a wheelchair, and now he can go up the stairs holding kettlebells. He's a machine.
That's amazing.
And not that he doesn't have limitations, but I mean, like, I think there's stories like that around me, right? Like there's ones, and I think when I read the Norman Doidge books, right, it's like full of, if it can happen to these people, why not me?
I love that. And that's,
right?
I think, yes, so true. Like the seeing what's possible makes such a difference in giving us like a glimpse of of what's possible, and hope that it could be my story too, right? I think for people who are curious, the Norman Doidge books are The Brain That Changes Itself and The Brain's Way of Healing. And they are definitely worth the read. I 100% agree. I love this book. And interesting side note, if you get the physical copy, in the appendix of The Brain's Way of Healing, they actually mention cognitive FX as which is cool, I think. But yeah, that hope that it's, if other people are doing it, that's possible for me, I think is huge, and a huge reason why I do these podcasts, because I want people to know, like,
right.
you're not suffering alone, and you're not crazy, and there is hope for healing. Like, but it's not an easy process. Like, I think that's an important thing to say as well. Like, it's okay if it's hard along the way, because that's part of it for everybody. At least everybody that I've ever talked to. I've never heard of it, but it's like, oh yeah, now like it was not a hard thing. How are you doing now, if you don't mind sharing? Are there things that you're still dealing with, or what keeps you going?
Well, I think one thing I still deal with is grief. I think there are certain moments that come, and I know grief can be just ongoing. It might never end, because it was a big change. I think there's moments when like I forget something, or like I make a mistake, especially if it affects my family. It's like I'm pulled back. It's like, it's, I think, emotionally a little trickier than what it would have been otherwise. Because I know, like, logically, like, I know, right? Like, I'm a mom. I got a lot going on. Run a business now. I study my brains off. I'm going to make, like, I'm not going to be perfect. Like, I'm going to make mistakes. Like, I logically know that, but it meant something different then. And that can be hard at times. But other than that, I feel like, honestly, I'm way better than before. Way better. Like, way better.
Better than before the injury.
Better than before the injury. Yeah, for sure. Like, because I think, there's so much I could say about this. I think, I do want to encourage people to just generally like stay open to what your body wants to do. Like, I think people have in mind, like, this is where I was, this is the point where I was, and this is where I am now after the injury. And I want to get back where I was. Like, they only kind of see two potentials. But the reality is there's many, many potentials, many, many, many options. And I think when you stay open to what your body really wants to do, or might like, or might make it feel good, there's other potential. And I think that happened for me in many ways. Like, so one of the things that I found that really helped me to feel good was being on a trail, like a nature trail of some kind. And, over time it kind of evolved. Eventually it turned into running on a trail, and eventually the miles picked up. And then eventually, like, this year I signed up for my first adventure race. If you would have told me like years ago I'd be doing endurance stuff, I would have like laughed. Like, it wouldn't be what I would have planned. And there's a number of things like that I can think about my life. Like, I had to be creative with my own cognitive work, for example. So I did the Brain HQ app occasionally. And I really did it once a week, because it was kind of I don't want to say it was easy to do, but it was easier than figuring out what I was going to do. Is just figuring, just doing the radiation stuff. And I had set to attention, which when you do that, you're really working on differentiating colors and patterns. And you're really pulling in your attention to really what you're seeing. And I had realized after doing that, like I have this annual tradition of making my kids birthday cards. And my daughter that year asked me to draw her a picture of our new puppy on a birthday card. And I was like, well, okay. It's not going to be good, but I'll do it. And when I went to draw the picture and I was staring at the picture of our dog, I realized after 2 minutes of staring at it that I could see so much more, than what I used to see. And I kind of made that connection because it kind of felt like the work I did on the Brain HQ. I was like, I can actually see more. And then I made the dog and it was a lot better than I expected. And I was like, but actually, I actually want to try like doing a real dog, like draw one, like, because I seen like, this is something that I could do. I didn't think I'd be able to do. And then I did it and it was pretty good. Like we hung it in my daughter's bedroom and then somebody saw it and then she's like, well, you make me a dog portrait. And then I ended up, this was like last year, I ended up churning out like 6 professional dog portraits.
I love it so much.
I never wanted to make dog portraits. I still don't have a goal of making dog portraits. It was just sort of like a fun detour and exploration of like, all right, like that's apparently trainable, like, okay. If I want that, that's a thing I could do. But other things, I kind of enjoy challenging myself now. Like it's kind of, my own guinea pig. It's like, well, what can I do with my balance? Can I get this? I was able to get like a pistol squat because I had in mind that was something that only, the fitness professionals do that, that are at the conferences that show off their skills. They're the only people that can do pistol squats. That's like a one-legged squat all the way to the ground, like holding a weight.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't familiar with it.
But I was able to get that. Just, working on applying the same principles, working right around my areas of limitation, working on my balance in different ways. And so there's a number of things that they keep accumulating. I got like a whole list, like a page and a half of personal records. I just keep trying stuff and doing it. And it's not out of like a pressure. It's out of like this exploration of like, how have I put limitations on myself with what I believe? Right?
Gosh, I love this so much.
And why don't I just challenge that? That's what that whole page is like. Actually, it doesn't matter that you're 44 and 5'10". You can do a pull-up, like you can, like it's like stuff like that I've kind of been enjoying doing.
I think that's so fabulous. And I love the mindset of that is it's not like, you're not like pressuring, like you said, it's not a pressure thing. Like, oh, to prove that I'm good, then I have to do these things. Like, it's not that. It's like oh my gosh, I already feel good. Let me see what's possible. And then like you're blowing your own mind. I think it's a beautiful example. And so good and helpful. I hope to hear for people who are in the middle of dealing with all these symptoms, like to know that you can get to a point where you're excited about exploring things and trying things and pushing yourself. That's huge.
Yeah, I think like that reminder, like we haven't trained our nervous systems before. I mean, I think someday it will be part of an everyday language, Until then, like know that like if you have never even tried like working your eyes and working on your balance and some of these other functions, like it's such untapped potential. So it's not just, it's more fun to train for a thing than it is to work on a problem. So I think it is good to just think about, I don't want to say think about it something else because I don't know, people were told that out of bad advice. I do mean just at least having hope for, something, and work for that. And you can use your therapies, your rehab as a training for the next thing.
Love that. If you could go back in time, is there any advice that you would give to yourself in the early days of your injury? Other than get help sooner.
Go get a second opinion. Knowing what I know now, I would have gotten care differently and as fast as possible, and I would not have let insurance determine my outcome.
Can we like have that like stitched on pillows and give it to everyone? Don't let insurance determine your outcome. Yes. Amen.
Yeah. That's the thing I would do. Like, nothing would, whatever, like it's scary because I know you don't want to spend money. It is scary, but it's just more expensive the other way in many ways.
Yes. Well, I would love for you to tell people how they can, like, what is it that you're doing right now to help people, and how can they hear more from you or get in touch and learn from you?
So yeah, I'm doing Revive coaching, helping people with their TBI recovery journeys. And, I do customize that. But as mentioned, the three primary things that it centers around usually are the symptom management, surviving the day-to-day to improve all of that, because it is this urgent, I think, people are getting lost in their symptoms in many ways and very, very stuck and unable to improve or face their difficult therapies. So symptom management, support with healthcare navigation, and then especially if people have been told they've reached maximum medical improvement, but still have goals, that's a great place to have conversations about, getting to the next level or potentially better than before. Mm-hmm. So I am on Instagram at Revive Brains and Facebook at Revive Coaching.
Awesome. And we will put those in the show notes as well. Thank you so much. Oh, and I'm just curious, and Z Health and the, what was the other
Next Level Neuro.
Those, and really fast, I guess we should probably mention this before we get off. What is that? Like, what do they teach you? What are you learning through Z Health and Next Level Neuro?
Well, I would define it as it's how to train the nervous system. Really, it's training the body with the nervous system in mind. It's how the nervous system is really in control. So you really are learning how to train people, but knowing that the nervous system really is in control. And as you are training the body, you're training the mind. And it's this general understanding of it's loosely described as applied neurology.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And it's effective. It's
primarily used right now with like elite athletes, really, like the trainers working with elite athletes, helping them to train their balance, vision, helping them to perform exceptionally in many ways, but it can be used in other ways too.
Yeah. That understanding of the nervous system is key. And I think it's starting to get out there. More people are understanding that, but I think this is an area, the concussion recovery area is key. Like it is fundamental in recovery from this. And it's something that is hopefully going to get out there more. People will understand that component of recovery. So I love that you're doing this. I love that you have had, I don't love that you've had the personal experience, but I love how you're using that experience to really help people. I think that's huge. And you're located in Pennsylvania. So if people are local, they can come to see you in person, but you also it sounds like you have online options for people as well. So
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, we'll put your information in the show notes, and thank you for everything that you're doing to help people in this space. I appreciate you sharing everything that you did today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.